The section that we are dealing now with is called An Introduction to Buffalo Hunting with Kana. Now, buffalo hunting, let's first just call it is what a buffalo is. In Africa, you get the Cape buffalo, the African buffalo, also known as the Black Death, the Widowmaker, or simply 1,500 pounds of dynamite. The most important thing about a buffalo or Cape buffalo, is that it's never referred to or should never be called a water buffalo. A water buffalo is something that is indigenous to Asia and Australia, and the temperaments are completely the opposite of a Cape buffalo. While the saying goes that an elephant never forgets, be assured a buffalo never forgives. If you've ever spoken to some old timers who did a lot of dangerous game hunting in the past, or even a modern day safari guide, if he knows what he's talking about, there's only one thing that stops a charging buffalo, and that is death. Either his or yours. Period. Either his or yours. I learned this all the hard way. One unforgettable day, and I say unforgettable because I remember the date. July 21, 1996. I was with my dad hunting in an area called the Nata Crown Lands of Bechuanaland. Bechuanaland, which is now, of course, called Botswana. Crown Lands simply because in those days the area or the Crown Lands was an area of which the lands belonged to the British Crown. It was an area of mostly boring Mopani shrubland. Mopani being a type of bush or tree, but it depends on the depth of the soil whether that thing can develop into a tree or remains a shrub. Now, the Mopani land there was just shrubland on the average between 3 and 5 feet tall. And it's very good area for buffalo, but hardly any terrain that you can call or offered any protection against any animal, with buffalo, elephant, lion, whatever, any angry beast for that matter. I was just 12 years old, and this is my introduction to, and this was, I was only 12 years old, and this was my introduction to big game hunting. Now, big game hunting in Africa differs from the term big game hunting in America. In America, big game hunting means anything bigger than a squirrel. For example, a deer or antelope or elk or moose. Big game hunting in Africa means dangerous game hunting. Lion, leopard, buffalo, rhino, etc. One thing that must be made clear is when we were hunting, it was not trophy hunting. We did not do trophy hunting as hunters in Africa in those days, in the context that we were hunting. We were hunting for meat, whether it was buffalo or whatever, antelope, elephant, the meat went to the locals. Or that's a difficult thing to explain. For us, buffalo was for us, being the hunters. Elephant was for the local folks, the meat, because we did not utilize the meat of, of elephant. It was mainly a way of controlling numbers. The government put out a certain number of permits per year to keep the elephant population within a certain number, if I can put it that way. Now, going on a dangerous hunt or a big game hunt, for any boy in South Africa who grew up on a farm, a ranch, obviously grew up with rifles. Many did not live on farmlands or grew up on farmlands, but hunting and rifles is just part of a South African or a Southern Africans, Southern African boys' soul. It is just part of your being, hunting. And for me, this is stuff that dreams are made of. And I was now going on my first dangerous game hunt at the age of 12. This also made me, of course, being age 12, the gopher in camp. Fix the tires, fill up the trucks with gasoline, um, make coffee, wash dishes, fix punches, clean the windshields, whatever. I was the gopher in camp, and they take of those kind of what do you call them, chores. You know, on this one particular day, we found tracks, buffalo tracks, pretty close to, I would say, pretty close, maybe within an hour after having left camp at a waterhole. The tracks were were still fresh, and the dung was still wet, so we followed them. And we didn't take long to catch up with them. They were, we found when we first saw them, they were about 200, 250 yards ahead of us. And we can only see the heads, the bosses, and here and there, maybe the top of the back of an animal, but mostly the heads and the necks and the horns, of course. Well, of course, it was just at that specific stage, it was just me and my dad. Thank goodness that there was not more. Well, at that stage, my father's words echoed in my mind. When we go on buffalo hunts or buffalo hunting, you at all times do as I say without questioning, immediately, at all times. And those words echoed in my mind. That advice would be life saving. Now, for some reason, those buffalo, we were downwind from them, but they sensed something. And some of the buffalo picked up their heads and started looking in our direction. Of course, the ones behind them saw that the ones in front of them were looking at something, but they couldn't make out what it is. So they would walk 2, 3 paces forward to see what was going on. That made them lean or push against the ones in front of them. And the ones behind them saw what was going on. It's like a chain reaction. What are they looking at that we can't see? So they would walk forward and push against the ones in front of them to see what those in front of them were looking at. Eventually, the ones in front would go over in a walk with a constant pressure against them. That walk turning into a trot, eventually turning into a stampede. My father spotted one buffalo bull, thank goodness, about 50 yards ahead of us, and not part of the herd. He was, of course, part of the herd, but not intermingled with the herd. He was 50 yards in front of them. He immediately brain shot the buffalo and dropped him in its tracks, dead. And he grabbed me by the shirt and said, "Come, come." And I could not understand why my father is now running towards the charging buffalo herd. But when we got to where that buffalo was shot, he threw me against that carcass. And we crawled and leaned against this carcass as best as we could. We saved our lives because the oncoming buffalo then, charging towards us, jumped over this carcass, jumped over us, or passed to the left or passed to the right of the carcass, which saved our butts.
How many buffaloes do you think?
There was probably about 150. I would say there's probably 150. My heart was racing like you can imagine. I mean, what felt like an eternity was just a couple of seconds, but my heart was beating so fast. My eyes must have been as big as saucers, but miraculously, we were unharmed. The respect that I had for my father, of course, saw that moment or after that instance, for him having had the presence of mind to do what he did, shooting the buffalo in the front of the herd and running towards it, throwing our bodies against the buffalo carcass because it was brain shot, it was dead. It was just, had it not been for that, there was no trees we could climb in or any other way escape this oncoming herd of charging buffalo. Had it not been for my father's presence of mind, we would have just been an entry in the Parks and Wildlife's journals.
Now, who loves that story?
Ay, 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 ay. My grandchildren. I'll,
Tyler.
yes, I'll get to that. But, let's first just finish with this. I said, my father, he was a man of the wilds. Although he was a practicing physician, not for the physician, a pathologist, he himself having grown up outside on a farm, he taught me everything that I knew about the bush. He always told me that the bush is like a newspaper. You can see from the tracks, if you pay attention, what was going on. Read it, take time, understand it, and you will see. Listen, and you will hear. And the wind, and the bush, and the nature, birds, scared, leopards, grunting, whatever. Listen, nature will tell you what is going on. Now, this story is something that my grandchildren just love. And when they were smaller, when they saw me, they always wanted to hear the story again. And I just smiled, okay, they want to hear the story. They don't even know what a buffalo is, but I'll tell the story. And at the end, after I've told the story to them, I remember one time Tyler asked me to tell the story again. And after having told him the story, I said to him, Mel, what is the moral of the story for you? And he did not understand what I meant by that. I said, well, what was the lesson of the story? He didn't know. I said, I'll explain it to you very quickly, in a very short term. Always listen to your father. He knows better than you. He's been there, done that. So whatever he tells you, it's based on experience. You won't regret it. Listen to your father. He knows better.